because our deepest wounds often reveal our greatest purpose. Welcome to the Court of Connection. I am so excited about this episode. It's all on nervous system regulation and capacity, which has been my whole world for the last couple of months. I've been thinking a lot about it because I went to this workshop called Bridge and Extreme Leadership. Shout out Preston and Alexi for creating such an incredible container, you guys. I'm talking this workshop. If you are looking for a breakthrough in your life, I am telling everybody and their mom, go, go, go. It is life-changing. So the thing I've noticed is that nervous system regulation is kind of something that's being talked about everywhere right now, which I love, but I also think it gets a little misunderstood. And honestly, I was confused about it too. The goal isn't to be perfectly regulated all the time. That's just not real. We're human. We're meant to move through different states: stress, activation, calm, all of it. The work isn't about not getting dysregulated ever. It's about how quickly you can notice how you respond and whether you're actually supporting your system or overriding, which is something I'm going to talk a lot about because your girl spent a lot of her life overriding her system. Yikes. So I think a lot of what we call regulation is, another word for override is self-soothing, right? Is escapism, is distraction. We reach for things that make us feel better in the moment, but they're not actually settling our system. It can look like grabbing your phone the second you feel uncomfortable. I know I'm guilty of that times. Scrolling, dopamine hits, just trying to shift your state. It can look like staying busy. I know a lot of people that are really good at staying busy. Oh my God, that was my life up until probably about a year, 2 years ago. I always had my plate full. I always was going from one thing to the next to the next. And it's like you get settled and you're fucking fried at the end of the night. If you feel me, nod your head, even though I can't see. I'm going to pretend you're with me here. So, it can look like being busy, so you don't have to sit with yourself. It can look like food, nicotine, alcohol, cleaning. Yep, I'm calling y'all out too. Even relationships, right? Like needing connection, attention to feel okay. And none of these things are bad. So I just want to get clear. None of these things are bad. They're just distracting us and they're soothing your nervous system. And we've just gotten really good at calling it coping. And what I didn't fully realize is that when I left my job was how many of my own ways of overriding were just built into my life. I had structure. I had constant engagement. I was always thinking, solving, moving, doing, on the phone, right? And in a lot of ways that kept me from having to sit with myself, but it was also killing me, quite literally. I remember moments where I would just be like in total freeze burnout of overwhelm because my nervous system had been on overdrive for hours and hours and hours and hours at a time. And I didn't really know how to successfully regulate it. Yes, I know breath, right? Go back to breath. But I would do that for a second and go right back to what I was doing, right? This mentality just like had me hijacked. So when that went away, there was just more space. Now, luckily, I went straight from my last day of work into Bridge and Extreme. And we literally 2 weekends straight for 8 to 9 hours a day worked on our nervous system and capacity. So I feel really grateful that I had that experience. But there are moments now having some space where I notice the urge to reach for my phone. I notice the discomfort and stillness. It's not as loud, but it's definitely there. I'm also in a 3-month coaching container where we were asked, it's an invitation, to give up our vices or things that get in the way of our next level selves while we're in this 3-month container. So, as one can imagine, the voice is even louder and more obvious. And this is where I started to see something really clearly. All of this nervous system work, not overriding, sitting with myself, it's actually about capacity. I had heard the word capacity thrown around a million times, but the way that they taught capacity made so much sense. It's about your ability to be with what's happening in your life without needing to escape it. And I think back, I'm just using my job as an example because it was so fresh. When I stepped away from that job, I had to look at some stuff. Some stuff came to the surface, as it should, right? I think anytime we have a transition in life or grow, the hope is that we really get to take a microscope into some of the ways that we showed up, some of the things that were effective, were ineffective, and have an opportunity to grow. And in that, I saw some parts of, some parts of my life in that role when I was really, really, really just overwhelmed. And my nervous system was just hijacked all the time. My stress level was so fucking high that my capacity to hold anything was very, very, very low. And I'll give you a couple of examples of what that looked like. My leadership was super poor at moments, right? Where I have a sharp attitude towards people on my team that I'm supposed to be leading, right? And, this doesn't come from a place of judgment. It just it just showed me how much capacity means something. It matters because without it, I'm snapping at people. I'm showing up in shitty, poor ways. I'm just not available as the leader and the person and the woman in the world that I want to be, right? So that's one example. Another example was everything, like I was in a relationship at one point in that job, and I just remember feeling like it was like crash and burn all the time. I would get so overwhelmed and I just didn't know how to say a thing and just say, hey, this is what I need. It was like all I had the capacity for was just like shut down, right? Or avoidance. And so it's how much you can hold emotionally, mentally, energetically, without shutting down or reaching for something to change how you feel. And so many of us do that, and we're programmed to do that. A lot of us are asleep to it. Or maybe we have moments where we wake up to it and we're like, oh shit, man, I've been scrolling for hours. And you're like, why do I do that? Right? My system is needing some way to soothe itself. And it's learned that when I do that, it settles a bit, but not really. Right? And so I've actually seen it show up in real time for me in conversations I've had lately. Conversations that in the past I would have handled very, very differently. These conversations were tough, looking back on the last month even, right? Where I've been faced with these really, really uncomfortable conversations where, the old version of me would have seen that as like this big, scary confrontation or, just something bigger than it actually was because I didn't have the capacity. And therefore, I would have shrunk. I would have erased parts of myself. I would have felt guilt for how the other person was feeling, and tried to fix it. And I would have softened my truth just enough to keep the connection, even if it meant leaving myself. And for any of you listening, I think one of the most painful things is erasing yourself or abandoning yourself in relationship and friendships, in jobs, romantic partnerships. Like, it is the ultimate self-betrayal is to abandon yourself. And I did it all the time. I lived in a constant state of abandonment. And guess what? I constantly feared abandonment. But see, what I know now is that as an adult woman, nobody can actually abandon me. When somebody said that to me, I was like, what do you mean? What it means is I'm an adult woman. Nobody can abandon me. I can be abandoned as a child. I can't be abandoned as an adult woman, but I sure as hell can abandon myself. And that, my friends, that's more painful than anything. Ugh, so painful. And so in these recent experiences, I didn't do that. I didn't erase myself. I didn't shrink. Now, it didn't look perfect. And in some of these conversations, they were pretty heated. And I remember thinking to myself, like, I just kept saying, like, you can be with this. You can be with this. In one particular conversation, it was like we had gone up and down. The energy rose, and then we would come back down, and we would meet in the middle, and then the energy would spike, and one of us would get activated, and the other one, and we would come back to center. And I remember thinking, like, oh my God, my whole life I've thought conflict was this scary thing that was bad, and here I am with total capacity to hold myself in this discomfort and have this really, really uncomfortable, confronting conversation with this person where I'm hearing things that I don't necessarily love hearing. They're hearing things from me that I'm sure they didn't love hearing. I know they didn't. But it was what was true for us at the time in that moment. And I got to stay, and I got to hold the truth, and I got to stand in my sovereignty and in my dignity. And I let the other person have their experience without trying to manage it. Now, did I have feelings coming up? Did I feel myself like slipping into wanting to fix at moments or to soften the blow? Or, I have this tendency, this is something that I'm currently working on, where in Bridge and Extreme, they call it landing the plane. And I have noticed that about myself, that when I get really uncomfortable, or maybe there's, it's a conversation that's not super comfortable, I can say a lot of words before I say the word. You know what I'm saying? Where it's like, la, 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 la. So that's something that I have been really working on these past couple of months, is just saying the thing. And so, none of this has looked perfect, but the important part is that I stayed. I stayed with myself. I told the truth. I let the other person have their experience, like I said. And let me tell you something about what that does for your self-esteem. I remember being with myself after one of those conversations, actually both, and being like, wow, like, you are fucking badass. Like, I love you. Like, I just love you, and I'm so proud of you, and I'm so grateful that you didn't abandon us this time. Like, wow, what a feeling. I remember tearing up and just being like, yeah, you're that fucking bitch, like, you're her. God. And, I'll do another episode at some point about some of the ways that, without giving any details, but like the ways that my capacity was stretched at these workshops. And one thing I will tell you, having now stepped into the arena, having now been more direct, having, really worked on these things and stood in my dignity and power and sovereignty, is that everything that we think we're afraid of that's on the other side of the thing is never there. I am here to tell you, it is the boogeyman in the motherfucking closet. It's not real. Like, it is not real. What we're really avoiding is the emotion that we think is going to come after, or that will come after, right? And this is where capacity is important, because if I have capacity, then I can hold myself in the emotion. What a concept. It seems so simple when you're saying it, but when your nervous system is activated in moments like that, it's a big ass deal. For those of you that understand, you know what I'm saying, okay? In fact, don't play me. Everybody listening to me right now is relating. And maybe you're better at this. Maybe you're more evolved in your life in this area, but at some point in your life, this has been a massive struggle for you. And maybe it currently is. And so that's why I'm recording this. So in those moments, like, I just did not recognize myself, not in a bad way, but in a way that showed me how much I'd grown. And being able to hold myself like that. It's not about holding more success or more opportunity, though. When you stretch your capacity, those things come. It's about holding yourself in moments that used to take you out. It's being able to feel discomfort and not abandon yourself inside of it. And once you start doing that, once you start showing up with honesty and alignment like that, you can't go backwards. You really can't. Because you felt what it's like to stay with yourself. And anything less than that feels off. Anything less than that is not something that you can accept anymore. It doesn't look perfect and it doesn't happen overnight. But I promise you, the more that you step into that, the more that you hold yourself and stand in that and stand in your power in these moments, little or big, that just gets easier. It just gets easier. I don't think that it'll ever be this like easy thing, right? I don't think that hard conversations are ever going to just be a breeze, right? We're human. I'm human. But my ability to, or my capacity to abandon myself absolutely shrinks. And I do believe that that piece does go away. I do believe that the more that you stop abandoning yourself, the less that happens, and eventually you just won't, because it's not a fucking option. So nervous system is directly tied to this, because your nervous system is always trying to keep you in what feels familiar. This is where it gets good. This is where a lot of you are going to relate. I know. I certainly had my share of this over and over and over again. So when something bigger comes into your life, right? More love, or the partner you wanted, or more attention, more visibility, more responsibility, a promotion, right? Opportunity. If your system is not used to holding that more, that moreness, that biggerness, that's not a word, but it's fine. It will try to bring you back to what it knows. That is why so many people will sabotage something that they worked really hard for, or wanted, or desired, right? They got the person, they got the thing, and then they're sabotaging it. That's why. It's not because you're crazy. It's not because you suck. It's not because any of these things. It's because you don't have the capacity to hold that thing. You want the healthy relationship, but if you're used to chaos, stability can feel boring and unsafe. So you start to pull away. You start to create problems. You can want more success, but when these things start working, your system gets overwhelmed and you procrastinate or you shut down. Who's with me? Literally, who is with me? Because I cannot be the only one here. You want more visibility, but when attention comes, it feels like too much, so you shrink. I have done that so many times. And I have this platform and I have social media, and I feel like at this point, that piece is easier for me, but it happens still. You shrink back into this smallness. And it's not because you don't want these things. It's because your system isn't used to holding it yet. I'm going to say this over and over and over again. In my humble opinion, nervous system work is the most important work that we have. It just is. And now I can see this season of my life, this space, this stillness, the discomfort. This is actually me stretching my capacity. This is me learning how to be with myself without immediately reaching for something, without reaching for my phone, without needing to go for a walk, without needing to put music on. Music's a huge one for me. It's about learning to be with myself. And it really looks like sitting on my couch and not grabbing my phone right away. It looks like letting a feeling come up and not trying to fix it. I have an over analyzer brain. I'm going to say up until now I did. But that's constantly trying to figure something out, right? Fix it. Letting things build instead of controlling them. Or what about a phone call or a text message? Can you be okay with stepping back and allowing there to be some space? Do you need to respond right away? And I understand sometimes we need to, but my system was so used to being available and in that everybody had too much fucking access to me all the time. It doesn't mean you're not important to me, but dude, why are you giving someone so much immediate access all the time? I know so many people that I highly respect that are not that available. And so that's been a huge practice for me, is when somebody calls or texts, like I really check in with myself. Like, what's your capacity? Do you want to take this call right now? Are you available? And I'll reframe that, because we're not always going to want to take the calls that we need to take, but am I available, right? Because this is something that I've been totally guilty of, and I know a lot of people in my life too, where you feel this obligation to answer the phone, right? Savior complex. And then you show up on the phone call shitty, or just not available, or distracted, or just not as well as you could. If you, guys? Had capacity for it, right? So that's something that I've really, really been practicing. And it's so small, but it's so big. I want you to ask yourself, where in my life am I quick to grab my phone? Do I answer my phone quickly? Do I need to be, am I quick to text someone back? Am I showing up in conversations unavailable, but pretending to be available? Like, these are the questions you get to ask yourself, because capacity is not built in big moments. It's built in the small ones, right? It's built in the ones where you choose to stay with yourself in whatever you're feeling. So this is something I also want to touch on before, we wrap up here, is I get a lot of calls, and I've been the caller so many times, but I get calls often where someone's like, I'm so anxious, right? I'm like full of fear, and it's like not going away. And that was the biggest misconception for me too, was that these things were bad, or they weren't meant to be here. Like, if they were here, it meant something bad, right? When what's simply happening is I'm a human being, and I sometimes experience anxiety. I sometimes experience fear. I sometimes experience joy, right? And part of capacity is also being able to hold more of that, right? Holding it, and also learning when to move it, right? Another really cool tool too is move the energy, right? Our bodies sometimes just have anxiety because it's built up energy that's just stuck in our system. So how does it want to move, right? Go on a walk, go to the gym, dance, jump, yell, like move the energy. Sometimes that's all that needs to happen. But I'm here to tell you, like, we're here to have the full human experience. And so these things are not bad. And I get to learn how to be with them more successfully, rather than needing this urgency to change how I feel, right? So if you feel like things come into your life and then fall apart, or you can't quite hold on to what you want, it might not be that you're doing something wrong. It just might be that your system is still learning how to hold it. So this season for me is not about rushing into what's next. That's what's been so beautiful, It's been about becoming someone who can actually hold what's next, because what's next for me is big. It's big stuff, you know? I will drop this because this feels a little bit exciting, or it's very exciting, but I am about to rebrand the podcast to match my business name. And I'm super excited about that. I have a TikTok series that I'm about to start that I'm really excited about too. It's going to be a lot of fun, and it's so in line with what I'm doing next, what I do in my life, and I'm just kind of bringing it out into the world. So I'm really excited about that too. I won't give away too much yet, but that is coming. So stay tuned. If you follow me on TikTok, or want to follow me on TikTok, it's at Court of Connection. That's also my Instagram. And then my Facebook is Danielle Cobb. And so I'm really, really, really excited about that. But what's been so cool is that I'm not rushing into anything. Like, I'm really like in this season of life of just flow and allowing, and learning how to move slowly. Like, I catch myself sometimes putting lotion on my body, and I'm like, like rushing through that process, or doing my skincare where I'm just like, it's funny. One of my best friends, we lived together for a long time, and she can attest to this. And also my other best friend that I FaceTime sometimes when I'm putting on makeup, who laughs at me because the way I do it, it's so fast, right? It's so fast. And so I'm just really learning how to slow down my life and my system, and allow, and be in the juiciness of presence and aliveness, and the little micro pleasures of life, and just being available for life. So yeah, so that's the super exciting stuff. And just learning how to be with myself without escaping, which is the ultimate gift. I mean, really, really, truly. So more is not the goal, guys. I don't want to move into this chapter of my life and be rushing and doing all this shit and building, and all of that gets to be there. But as I stretch my capacity, things just flow. Things just start to show up in your life. It's an amazing concept. So thank you guys so much for tuning in. I need to be doing more of these solo episodes. I will make that a priority. I love doing this and sharing my experience. And so until next time, may the cord that binds us to one another and to Source remind you that you are never alone, always guided, and always home.